Well, thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here. What an impressive turnout. And I think it's a very important movement that Hispanic employees of our state of Illinois have launched over many years. I think this is the 26th year. And the first 26 are the toughest. We've got to keep on pushing here. And we have a lot of work to do. I thought we ought to kind of go over a couple of things that we're working on now that are important. I think it was very, very important that our state passed a DREAM Act, an Illinois DREAM Act that provides scholarships to students who are undocumented but who have the ability to go to college. That was a major step. And, you know, the next year we took the step again. I signed the bill this past year in making sure that we have driver's licenses for those. And I know Secretary of State Jesse White next week, I think, is going to be issuing the regulations to provide driver's licenses for those who are undocumented. Again, we want to be leaders in Illinois. We want to make sure that we really get the word out to the federal government about how important it is to have immigration reform in our country. We pass it in the Senate. We have work to do in the House. We've got to all work together on this mission, and I think it's exceptionally important that we get it done as soon as possible. Now, just the other day in Springfield, where we had our state legislative session for a couple of days, I was visited by a number of folks, particularly from community colleges and four-year public universities in Illinois. And one thing that came out very clearly is how important it is for our state to continue the movement for the Monetary Assistance Program. That's a mouthful, but that's our scholarship program for students who have graduated from high school, who want to go to four-year university. We have a scholarship program that's been around for more than half a century. I think it's 150,000 students in Illinois get scholarships under this program. The problem is we have 150,000 more students who are on the waiting list. The money runs out. It's about $400 million. We need more money in this program for more scholarships for young people of great talent, ability. They may want to go to community college. They may want to go to four-year public universities or private universities right here in our state of Illinois. I was driving along on Stevenson just the other day. I looked over and saw the the billboard for St. Augustine, a great educational institution. And I was able to visit with the folks from there not too long ago, and they pointed out how many of their students, whether at that school or whether at Northeastern or whether at UIC or University of Illinois in Champaign or at DePaul or Loyola, are getting scholarships under our program. And without those scholarships, those students wouldn't be able to go to college. And I think it's so important if we're going to continue our movement to hire more employees who reflect the diversity of our state of Illinois, and it's exceptionally important that we do that. We want to make sure we continue to have our institutions of higher learning providing the opportunity to go to college for so many deserving young men and women. More than half of the 150,000 students who do get scholarships are of color, and it's so important that we not let them deny them the opportunity to go to college. I think would be a very serious mistake for our state. So I really look forward to working with everybody here in the coming year to try and improve the funding for our monetary assistance program. At the same time, they have many folks here who work with our children in our state of Illinois. There's no more important duty than we have than to be custodians of our children's future. And in our state, we need and have a very good program of early childhood education, but we have much more to do. We want to make sure that every child has the opportunity for education from birth to 5, from cradle to classroom. And this is exceptionally important for the Latino community in Illinois. Many of our boys and girls who are in school today, in grammar school and high school, 25% of our students in Illinois today in grammar school and high school are Latino kids, and we want them to get off to a very good start, and it starts with early childhood education. And so I really look forward to folks here working on that issue as well. Scholarships for our students ready to go to college, and early childhood for our children who are born today. And I think it's important that our state invest, and we are, in the early childhood facilities. One thing that I was able to do when I became governor is we were able to work with the legislature to pass a bill to provide funding not only for our roads and our bridges and our water systems and our rail systems. We all know that's important, but we also have to build schools and rebuild schools and make sure our schools are 21st century ready. Make sure they have the kind of opportunity for technology for kids to learn. I was in Berwyn this past year at a school district 100, and the first and second graders all had tablets. They had the opportunity in their school to learn in a very novel way, a very vivid way. I was so impressed by the boys and girls in that community, in that school, who are learning. And so we got to make sure that every kid has that opportunity in Illinois. We can't deny them that opportunity. It's so important that we who are adults understand that the great thing about America is we sacrifice some of our present as adults to help our kids' future. And that, to me, is what this organization has always believed in. You always believe in the future and fighting hard. And we're going to hear from the keynote speaker, Antonio, about how important education is to advancement in our society. And I wanted to salute one of our honorees here today, Rodrigo Garcia, who I appointed to the Assistant Director of Veterans Affairs in our state of Illinois. And we have many, many Hispanic veterans from our state who have served in Iraq, served in Afghanistan, who are coming home. And our job is to make sure they have a job and make sure that we take good care of them. You know, Rodrigo, that's part of his job at the Department of Veterans Affairs, and he has a very interesting history. Grew up in Pilsen. His dad was a metal collector. He literally went through the alleys of Pilsen collecting metal and recycling that metal. And Rodrigo, as a young boy, went along with his dad's pickup truck. And then he went to school here. He went to UIC, University of Illinois at Chicago, which has nearly 25% Hispanic students, and he graduated from there. And then he got a MBA degree as well, and he started a group after his military service, a veterans group on the campus of UIC. Then he went to work for the Federal Reserve Bank. Now he's working for the state of Illinois, like folks here. And it's important that we continue and find men and women like Rodrigo Garcia, who know how to get the job done and do it right for everyone. And I want to also salute another important person in our state government who has a very tough job, and that's Tony Godinez, who is our Director of Corrections. Very important department. We have a large prison system, as everyone knows. It's not the easiest thing in the world to manage, to say the least, and Tony is doing an excellent job doing that, and I salute him. And we want to continue to recruit men and women to our state, to work for our state, to carry on the mission of this organization, to make sure that everybody has a fighting chance to get a middle-class standard of life and to help others. And I think it's important. I was just driving yesterday, up to Wheeling High School, where Laz Lopez, who is now is involved with the school district, but he was the principal of the year last year, and he served at Wheeling High School. He had so many creative programs that involved science and technology and engineering and math, and we were with Secretary of Education Arnie Duncan and saw firsthand something our state got for that high school, Wheeling High School, very diverse high school with many, many Hispanic students. But they have a nanotechnology lab right there at the high school. And I talked to students, Latino students, who are having hands-on learning with something like nanotechnology, which is quite complicated, I can tell you that. But the bottom line is that it's a wave of the future, and we want our students to have that kind of education so that they can get the jobs in the private sector that are really burgeoning. The Secretary of Education said we may have as many as 2 million jobs in nanotechnology within a short time in our country. So we've got to make sure we have everyone educated. But when we were driving up there to Wheeling from downtown Chicago, I went by the new, I think it's El Centro, the new campus that's being built for Northeastern University, right there, right off the Kennedy. And it'll be able, you can take the L to get there and walk to the campus. And if you drive, you can park right off the Kennedy. It's important that we understand that we have lots of work to do in the state of Illinois. We have made progress, I think, over the last few years, but more to do. And it's very, very important that our employees who are on the front end, who understand how important it is to have diversity, to make sure that we have an office of new Americans, as we do in our state, for folks who have just come to Illinois, to make sure that they get the kind of welcome they deserve. When I went to Mexico earlier this year, we were able to visit with the mayor of Mexico City and the governor of the state of Mexico, and they pointed out that Illinois, we're not Arizona. We believe in welcome. We believe, and it's very important we have that connection. And I want to just close with, I think, a very important kind of concept. And I had the honor a long time ago, in 1974, to shake the hand of Cesar Chavez when he was here in Chicago. And he was a great man indeed. He believed in reading. He really believed in reading. And matter of fact, when he passed away, he was literally reading a book. And he always understood how important it was to say that readers are leaders. And Cesar Chavez, he's extremely well known for saying, "Si se puede," and President Obama picked up on that saying, "Yes, we can." But that night when I met him on the northwest side of Chicago, February 19th of 1974, Cesar Chavez said another thing that I think your organization has always embodied, and that he said, "Juntos podemos," together we can. And that's what we've got to do, have that mission of we're going to work together and do as much as we can to make the will of people the law of the land. Thank you very much.
Thank you to our governor for joining us this afternoon as we enjoy our lunch. I'm going to introduce to you your keynote speaker as you wait for your dessert. You quiet down, they take your plates away. I had a chance to sit next to this gentleman, and he's got quite a story, very charismatic and very endearing, so I think you're going to like him. His name is Antonio Flores. He's actually here in town for a conference which is going on this weekend for the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. So just to give you some background on him, in 1996 he became the third president and chief executive officer of the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. It is the only national association representing existing and emerging Hispanic-serving institutions. Its membership actually includes more than 400 colleges and universities that serve 2/3 of the more than 2.5 million Hispanic students in U.S. higher education across 33 states, Puerto Rico, the District of Columbia. That is an astounding number, very nice, 2.5 million. He's received a number of awards, of course, honors for his contributions to higher education. Most recently, he was featured by Univision Network in an Orgullo Hispano edition honoring notable and influential Hispanics and Hispanic Americans. He's recognized by the Educational Policy Institute with a Lifetime Achievement Award. So I think he probably deserves a pretty loud round of applause. So let's do that for Mr. Antonio Flores.
Buenas tardes. I didn't hear you very well. Let's try again. Buenas tardes. That sounds better. Muchas gracias, Lourdes, for that very flattering introduction. And thank you, Mr. Prado, Mr. Lopez, for inviting me to be part of your program. I'm delighted to be here with you this afternoon and participate in this outstanding program that you have organized to advance the mission of the Illinois Association of Hispanic State Employees, or IAHSE, I guess is how you like to call it. Y sí hace, ¿verdad? Sí hace. I want to recognize someone in the audience who is very, very important to HACU and to myself. He's my boss. He's the chairman of the board of HACU, el doctor Jorge Vélez Arocho. If he could stand up there. El doctor Vélez Arocho es el rector, presidente de la Universidad Católica Pontificia de Puerto Rico, and chair of our governing board of HACU. And of course, I want to thank you, all of you, and congratulate you for what you're doing as an association. I think what you're doing, what IAHSE is doing, is truly an exemplary model of success for the rest of the country to emulate, for other states to try to replicate. And of course, you are celebrating your 26th annual conference today. And what Governor Quinn said is true. The most difficult years are the first 26. And I say this because HACU actually is celebrating its 27th anniversary. And so the two associations were almost born around the same time, and yet what I really couldn't help but notice as great achievements of IAHSE is the fact that you have achieved something that probably is, if not unique to Illinois, is very much special about the state of Illinois, when bilingual pay actually is done for bilingual services. This obviously recognizes the value of Spanish, language, and culture in ways that other states do not yet recognize. So you have to be commended for having achieved that particular milestone. But you also have supported throughout the years a scholarship fund for young people to go to college. And this is so central to HACU's own mission of championing Hispanic success in higher education that obviously I personally feel very much animated by the fact that you promote our own mission of Hispanic higher education success. The other accomplishment that is very important is that you have compelled the state of Illinois to provide periodic reports on how much progress is being made with respect to Latino inclusion in terms of recruitment, hiring, and promotion, something that is fundamental to the cause of diversity and inclusion for Latinos everywhere. And I think this is really outstanding of you to have carried that out. And then, of course, holding conferences like this, when you showcase your best practices and set new directions for the work of IAHSE, I think it's just remarkable. And you do all of this almost entirely by volunteers. So I think you really have to give yourselves a big round of applause for having achieved so much with so little. You really are a model for the country. And we as an association of HACU, the least that we can do is obviously to support your work. And let me just tell you that, like many of you here today, or your parents, I'm an immigrant to this great country as well. I came to the U.S. at the tender age of 25. And I didn't go to the Southwest or the Southeast or the Northeast. I came to the Midwest. My first year and a half was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, not far from here. And the rest of my almost 22 years in the Midwest were in Michigan. So by now you might have noticed that although our association is based in Texas, and I've been there for nearly 16 years, the Texas drawl is not yet there. And I tell my friends that I'm working at it in Texas, but the fact of the matter is that because I came so early in my time in the US and Michigan, and is where I really went to graduate school and learned English, that my accent is not so much Tex-Mex as it is Mich-Mex. And it's true. It's a Midwestern kind of accent, Latino accent, but I remember that when we were living in Michigan, my wife and my 3 children and I would love to come and visit this great city for summer vacation. This was our choice city for summer vacation. Not only because it has all these great places to go and visit, but it also because it has all these great South Side, Mexicano, Latino, Calle 18, La 26, La Villita. And we really love to come, and my kids thought that we were in Mexico when we were there. But I think it's what makes Chicago a great city. The fact that the Latino language and culture adds that much more richness to the life of this city. And so I just wanted to share with you that I'm very fond of coming to Chicago, and we have a history of doing so for many years. Now, what I'd also noticed is that statewide now Hispanics represent almost 17%, more than 16% certainly, of the entire population of the state of Illinois. And, you know, I just came back a couple of days ago from Hartford, Connecticut, when I went to give a talk at an education conference. And the population, the Latino population in the state of Illinois represents the entire population of Connecticut. You are like a state within a state. And of course, in Chicago, the proportion of Latino population is even greater because nearly 1 of every 3 people in Chicago is a Hispanic. And of course, the growth of our population will only continue to increase our representation in both Chicago and the state of Illinois. What is regrettable, in my view, is when I looked at the numbers of and proportion of Latino employees with the state of Illinois and the state government. Only 4% or so of the total workforce of the state government is Latino, when almost 17% of the general population is. That, to me, is disgraceful. And it has to be corrected. And it has to be corrected as quickly as possible. I believe Governor Quinn has obviously a commitment to closing that gap. And we also believe that organizations like HACU and the institutions that we represent are committed to helping in that regard, because obviously many times what they tell us is, well, you need this credential or you need that credential. And that means getting a higher level degree of what you have to move up the ladder or to enter the labor force, because I realize that if 4% is low as a total proportion of the government labor force in the state of Illinois, the representation of Latinos in the upper levels of government are even lower. And it is, again, a question of having those degrees on hand to make sure that questions are not raised about our capacity to do the work that needs to be done. And this is what HACU obviously represents. Institutions in Chicago and other cities across the state that are affiliated with us provide that opportunity. But we also recognize that more than half of the battle for higher education success has to be won in K-12. I just came back from a youth forum that we're having, an all-day youth forum that we're having at Northeastern Illinois University as a HACU pre-conference activity. There are about 600 middle and high school students there being provided with not only motivation, but guidance on how to prepare themselves to complete a high school diploma and move on to get a degree, a college degree. And by that I mean nothing minimum of a bachelor's degree. A college degree minimally has to be a bachelor's degree. Because in today's economy and labor force, I believe the bachelor's degree is the new high school diploma of the last century. You need that as a minimum credential to really become leaders in your respective careers. And of course, graduate degrees are even better, but minimally, that's what we mean by a college degree. Now, we are so committed to really helping K-12 education, although we are a higher education association, that years ago, HACU created an office of K-12 initiatives. And that office is dedicated to nothing else than to establish collaborative relationships between our colleges and universities with K-12 schools where we have large concentrations of Latino students. And that is working very, very well. Because it's working so well that as we do our work with the US Congress, we have an office in Washington to do that work. We intend to amend the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, also known as the No Child Left Behind, to include provisions that will establish in law the importance of Hispanics serving as school districts. Districts that have 25% or more Latino enrollment, which will mirror the definition of what is now in law recognized as Hispanic serving institutions. And we are going to really push for that to happen in the next opportunity that Congress reauthorizes that particular legislation. But we also recognize that we need to recover the talent that is represented by the millions of Latinos across the country that have dropped out of high school, never completed a high school diploma. Unfortunately, we have more Latinos who are dropouts today than we have Latinos with college degrees. So we do have to work very hard at getting them back on track and moving them forward in the direction of a college education. Now, tomorrow afternoon, HACU will launch its 27th annual conference at the Hilton Chicago. And I want to take this opportunity to invite each and every one of you to join us, because this conference offers great opportunities not only to connect with individuals and organizations that are committed to advancing higher education success in our community, but also employment opportunities in corporations and federal agencies. We have a tremendous program that will be started tomorrow at 4 p.m. Will continue to Monday night. And there will be actually a free event, absolutely at no cost to you, on Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. There will be a career fair where not only will you have access to those who are going to be providing information on career and college opportunities at that career fair, but to the main exhibit hall of the conference, which includes about 150 exhibitors from across the country who are looking for Latino talent, and institutions that are looking to also help develop that talent. So please join us beginning tomorrow. We will be starting at 4 p.m., as I said a moment ago. And if you want to look up the program and see if you in fact want to join us, just check out our portal. It's at hacu.net. That's our portal's address. You can go there and find everything about HACU's conference. Now, HACU not only advocates for support of Hispanic serving institutions by the federal government and success of Latinos in higher education across the country. We also, of course, are committed to major issues that affect our community across the land, such as comprehensive immigration reform, and particularly to the passage of the DREAM Act. As you know, the DREAM Act has not been passed, nor has immigration reform in general. It's been 12 years since they started trying. And unfortunately, when it was possible, just a few years ago, in 2009, when the party that has been pushing the hardest to pass the legislation had control of the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the White House, they didn't pass it. It's still a mystery and a great disappointment to me as to what did happen. But they began already talking again about the possibility of passing immigration reform. And of course, we will support that. But I hope that they don't hold hostage again the DREAM Act to the passage of everything else. If everything else cannot be passed, I think they should at least pass as soon as possible the DREAM Act. And we hope that you can support that approach of comprehensive immigration reform in general, but specifically the DREAM Act. So let me just, in closing, applaud IAHSE por todo lo que hace, porque hace mucho. Y quiero saludarlos a nombre de HACU por todo el trabajo que están haciendo en pro de nuestra comunidad y desearles mucho éxito, no solamente en su conferencia de hoy, sino en su trabajo futuro. Que continúen por donde van y que les enseñen a otros estados cómo hacer lo mismo. I think you can be not only an inspiration, but a true guide for other states to do what you're doing. And I applaud your commitment to IAHSE and invite you again to come to our conference beginning tomorrow afternoon at the Hilton, Chicago. Como decía el gobernador hace un momento, y en inglés el presidente actual lo repitió, sí se puede. And the fact that you're here today together, united, working for a common goal as an association of state employees in Illinois truly demonstrates that. I commend you for that and encourage you to continue doing what you've been doing. Así que a seguir adelante y sí se puede. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much, Antonio, and good luck with your conference coming up this weekend. You bring up some really interesting points, and one of the things that I want to point out is a lot of times, so I go to classrooms and I'll talk to students, high school students, and maybe you can help me answer this question and give me some guidance here, right? So I'll go to these classrooms, and maybe it's a junior class or a senior class, and so at least 24 times I've walked into these classrooms, and it's mainly girls. There'll be like 3 boys in this classroom, and so I finally went up to one of the teachers and I said, what is going on in these schools? It's all girls. There are no boys in here, right? And they said to me, well, a lot of times why you see mainly girls is because a lot of the boys, they end up dropping out, or they join a gang, or they have to work for their families and they don't have a chance to finish high school. So I keep wondering, and I pose the question to an organization like you, what do we do to try to keep a lot of these young men in school so that they do go on to college, so that there's not such a sort of different balance to where more women are going to college and graduating, which I love, right? But I'd like to see the men do well as well. So I don't know if you want to take that question real quick since we've got a few minutes. Yeah? Thank you, Antonio.
That's a great question. As I said a moment ago, we just came from a youth forum at Northeastern Illinois University where hundreds of Latino students are participating in this important event. And again, the overwhelm, in fact, Dr. Vélez Arocho was pointing out to me, I said, Antonio, it's almost all girls. Y le digo yo, es que las mujeres son más inteligentes, son más listas. I don't think that answers your question at all. The fact of the matter is that with all due respect to all of the governors of this great country, if you look at the track record of the last 15, 20 years with respect to public investments, the overwhelming majority of the money has been going to correctional facilities, whereas the most significant major cuts, cutting to the bone in some states, have been going to education. So we have our priorities backwards. Because when you look at other data, for example, the U.S. has the highest rate of incarceration of any country in the world. About 800 people for every 100,000. And when you compare, I mean, the very distant second is Russia in terms of the number of incarcerated people. But when you look at the correlation between incarceration and education, the most advanced country in education is Iceland. Well, Iceland has the lowest rate of incarceration. So it doesn't take rocket science to understand that where you put your resources is where you are going to get a return on the money. And, you know, for every dollar invested in education, economists have already analyzed and concluded that society gets a $7 return for every dollar. Because obviously you prepare better the labor force to take on higher paying jobs. They pay more taxes. With those taxes, you provide better services. And you don't have to incarcerate as many people because education is one of the main factors in reducing delinquency rates, delinquency behavior. So to the extent that we do not invest in the way we have to in public schools and really refurbish, improve our educational system, we are going to continue to have problems. Now, we compare ourselves to the rest of the industrialized countries. We're number 12 in the higher education attainment rate, degree attainment. 12. We used to be number 1. Okay? We used to be number 1 20 years back. How did we find ourselves falling so much? Well, because we decided to invest in other things, not so much in education, but in a more sort of community-grounded way. It is critical that we as a community also invest more of our time and effort in working with families, especially low-income families, in helping them understand the importance of a college education and how to get it. That people like yourselves who have a college education become mentors and become tutors and work with schools and work with college universities that are connecting to K-12 schools and providing those services, while we also push for greater investments in K-12 education. And of course, we need to also work with the media, because the portrayal of Latinos, if you look at almost anything on the popular media, is very negative. They glorify narco traffickers, even some of the music, the narco corridos y todo eso, ¿no? And of course, our young people are very vulnerable to all of those influences. So we have to challenge the media to be more socially responsible. And here I have to give credit to at least one of the networks that is trying to do something, que es Univision. Univision. Univision has an initiative on education. And in many markets, especially Latino markets, they are the #1 network. And they are really pushing hard to better understand how to help and motivate young people to pursue an education, and especially helping parents and families to understand how they can become effective partners in the education of their kids. 2 weeks ago, I was in LA at a town hall meeting hosted by Jorge Ramos, dedicated exclusively to the question of education for Latinos. And they are doing a series. I hope all of the networks and all of the media outfits help us in that regard, because they could really influence and reshape the mindset of many young people who otherwise will be lost to delinquency and to things that obviously are harmful to society and to themselves. So it's not just the loss of money, but it's the loss of human talent that we don't capture, we don't cultivate, because they are incarcerated in most cases, or in the streets, behaving as delinquents and juvenile delinquents or otherwise. So we do have a lot of work to do. Is more investments, more work with families. I think the schools have to be more accountable as well. It's not just about providing a place for them to gather, but about ensuring that the teachers are well prepared and that there is leadership in each building that really cares about every single youngster, and that everyone is held accountable. And is held accountable for results. This morning, at 8 o'clock, my day began holding a meeting with Secretary Duncan at the hotel where we're going to have our conference, and about 20 our presidents of college universities, to have an intimate conversation with him on issues related to our institutions and the students they serve. And of course, we stressed to him the importance of some of the points that we just made. And we will continue to push, not just with Secretary Duncan and the Department of Education, but the U.S. Congress, the federal government, and now we have an office in Sacramento, California, from which we are doing state-level policy work, because guess what? Most of the money for education doesn't come from the federal government. For K-12, only about 7% of all the money in K-12 comes from the federal government. The bulk of the money is from the state and from the local governments, because it comes from property taxes and state taxes primarily. And for higher education, at least for the public side of higher education, is not much different. Yes, the federal government provides leadership and a lot of the money for student aid and higher education, but it is primarily a function and a responsibility of the states. And so we intend as an association to push even harder with the states where we have large concentrations of Latinos to make sure that their policies change in the direction of major investments in K-12 and higher education for our community. So that's in essence my point.
Thank you, Antonio. He just put the pressure on me, the media. All right, I'll take it, I'll take it. Okay, so we get to the best part of today, which is the awards. We all like that. And we're actually gonna start with, I'm not pointing any fingers, but he's right over there. Michael Kendo. You guys have heard of him, right? Maybe once or twice? So Michael Kendo is receiving the Community Service Award. And if you've never heard of Mike, start paying attention, okay? So just to give you some background on him, he is a producer of Mikey O Comedy Show. He is the creator, producer, and host of over 80 theatrical and comedic productions yearly, both in the Chicagoland area, throughout the country as well. The Mikey O Comedy Show has been featured on Telemundo, never heard of him, WGN-TV, I've heard of that station, Univision, People en Español, and a lot of other publications. He is especially proud of 3 notable milestones in his career, serving on the Board of Governors for the National Academy of the Recording Arts and Science, which created the very first Latin Grammy Awards. He was also a concept contributor on 3 HBO Latino specials, lastly creating his community partner nights, which raises about $90,000 annually for local nonprofits. And I've actually done a story on Michael Kendo, and it's really incredible, some of the work that he's doing. And he's doing it in a fun way that gets all of you guys involved, which is what we need. So he is receiving today the Community Service Award. Thank you, Mikey O. Come on up.
Mike, the Illinois Association of Hispanic State Employees presents to Michael Kendo for his outstanding contribution to the Illinois Latino community. October 25th, 2013.
All right, thank you so much. Gracias. I'll keep it short. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I want to thank you all for, of course, letting me come up here for just a few minutes. I'm going to keep this brief. I know we got a long rest of the afternoon ahead of us. And, of course, thank you to Mr. Flores for speaking. It was very, that number of 2.5 million is just amazing. So give it up for him one more time. Those are my favorite kind of speakers. But really, really quick, I want to thank Tony Godinez. You guys know him, Department of Corrections. Everything is about titles. I know him as the dean of my alma mater. Thank you so much for your service when I was at your school called the county. Anyway, I want to make this brief because I got to go. I want to go ahead and just talk for a few minutes about this project. So what I'm about to talk to you right now is completely contradictory to what's in the bios, okay? So what I do for a living, 90% of my day consists of creating comedy, writing comedy, producing plays, both here in Orlando and in New York. And so that's what I do for a living. What I'm about to talk to for a few minutes is nothing about what I do for a living, but I want to tell you what they told me I couldn't talk about. They said, don't talk about the governor, don't talk about state workers, don't talk about the casino, don't talk about the government shutdowns, don't talk about the Cubs, don't talk about Obama. So ladies and gentlemen, have a good night. Thank you for being here. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to talk at Eli Whitney School. So this project that I'm involved with now takes me to a lot of different places throughout the city. And yesterday at Eli Whitney, the same type of thing. I don't know what they think, because if you go to my website or if you follow anything I do, I don't have any profanity or any hate humor. It's not what I do, right? But walk into the school and the teacher says, please don't, don't shock the kids. And this was in Little Village, and they're doing a great job over there. And so I told the kids this joke. I want you to take this joke back with you to your kids and grandchildren. And if you're a teacher, take it back to your students. What is Michelle Obama's favorite vegetable? Broccoli. Anyway, so take that back. That's what I told the kids. And as I'm leaving this place, whenever I talk to kids and whenever I'm around children, it reminds me of why I made this film. Now, I'm about to do something here that some of you are going to get very uncomfortable with. But let's just do this for a second, just for a moment. I'm going to count 10 seconds, and I want you to think of somebody who has been profound in shaping who you are today and why you're in this room today. Take that moment. I'm counting 10 seconds. Go. For some of you, it was a mentor, a tía, a tío, abuelo, abuela, a neighbor. For most of you, if not all of you, it was mom. Am I right? Am I right? And these are the people that I write about in my movie. That I highlight in my movie. My movie is called For the Love of Mom. It is the film I did not want to make. It is a 27-minute documentary about what happens to a mother when their child has been murdered by gunfire. And so here are some crazy numbers. Crazy numbers. In the last 10 months, 9 children under 8 have been murdered or injured by gunfire. 10 months, 9 children under 8 murdered or injured by gunfire. Most of you got here at 8 o'clock this morning. It's now 2 p.m. There have been 4 murders in the United States. 3 of those were preventable. 80% of the offenders started offending when they were children. That's a fact. Look it up. I'm pretty sure that the Department of Corrections folks can validate that. So when I was invited to a high school to go speak to young people about violence before I made the film, and I walked into this room, and there were all these officials there, and I was one of the speakers. And when I walked into this room to speak, and I sat in the audience waiting for my turn to be called up, and people like police commanders and politicians and sociologists and a surgeon from a trauma hospital, 700 kids in the auditorium, and not one kid paying attention. What were they doing? Texting, Facebooking, Twittering. That was the first thing that happened. The second thing that happened as I sat in this auditorium 2 years ago, not one teacher, not the lunchroom lady, not security, not anybody said, hey, there are adults speaking. Pay attention. You've only got to listen for 20 minutes. On top of that, I found out afterwards that the only reason they were there was because instead of going home at 2:30 on Friday, they were going to be let go home at 12:30. So that was the incentive. When I left there frustrated. Because I thought to myself, not that it was a waste of my time. I never consider speaking to young people a waste of my time. I have never charged to go speak. I speak at a lot of schools. I have never charged to go speak to any students, and I never consider it a waste of time. Adults, I charge double. But I left there frustrated, and that was Friday. And on Sunday night, I turned the news on, and there is a story of a 6-year-old girl who had been murdered on the South Side. And I looked at this little face, and I don't know her, did not know her family, but having a son her age, I could write her story in my head. Does that make sense? Like I could hear her talking about what she wanted to watch on TV. And I could hear her talking about, I want Cheerios. Don't put a lot of milk in it. I could hear her through my son. And the next morning, I got on the phone and I started calling some people and I started saying, hey, look, I want to make a film. I got to do something, and I think a film's the way to go. And I don't want to talk about guns, and I don't want to talk about the mayor, and I don't want to talk about gun control. I don't want to talk about gangs. I just want to talk about what happens to a mom the moment she gets the news that her kid's been killed. And I researched and I found 2 moms who were willing to tell me the story, and one of the moms was the mother of little Aaliyah Shell. So I recruited people smarter than me, with more technical, I'm not a filmmaker. I didn't know anything about a camera. I didn't know anything about editing, When I've been referred to, WGN, Lourdes had me on her show, and WTTW and PBS, they've said, you're a filmmaker now. No, I'm not. I made a film, and I used the people who knew a little bit about that, and I got these moms together, and we made this film. And the film is 27 minutes long, not intended to embarrass politicians. It has no political motive. It has no financial motive. It does not talk about neighborhoods. And why did I do that? Why did I do that? We spoke about that a second ago. Mr. Flores touched on it. Because I didn't want a kid from Pilsen, Humboldt Park, Roseland, Inglewood, La Villita, the Southeast Side, to continue to hear by another form of media, wow, my neighborhood must be a bad neighborhood. Bad people come from my neighborhood. They said it again in this film. In my neighborhood, that's where we kill kids. I didn't want that to happen, so I did not put that in the film. And recruiting people to help with the film was very easy. Recruiting volunteers to help with the film was very easy. When people say, well, if you didn't make any money on it, and you're not making any money on it, the first person to summon me into his office was the police superintendent. And when I say summon, it was a summon. I thought they were looking for me for a parking ticket from 1994. And I go to his office, and he says, you made this film. What's the catch? Are you trying to add more? Is this like, trying to embarrass the city? I said, no. And he says, well, what are you trying to sell the city? I've got nothing to sell the city. In fact, the film costs $1.50 to make. $1.50, each copy of that film's $1.50. You want to know how I paid for it? Let me tell you a little something about raising funds. I say this respectfully. White people love paella. Paella and sangria. White people love paella and sangria. And they do. They do. So I put together a list of every white person with a little bit more money than me, and they were on white night. I had white night at my house. And then I had another list where I did Latino night, okay? And I had 2 nights at my house where I invited 30 people to my home. And I make an amazing paella. And I made paella, and I packed my house with people, and I raised the money to create 2,000 copies of the film. 2,000 copies. That's how we raised the money. 100% of the film was made by volunteers. 100% of the money was raised. There is no catch. So people now have invited me to come out to different places. I have been to prison 6 times. 6 times. Not that way, though. I got out. My favorite prison I went to was, I was honored to be invited by the warden of the Federal Correctional Institute, the big metro, the big federal one, the Triangle building. And of course, my first question was, you're inviting somebody in, you can't keep people in, you know what I mean? They're coming out of windows, And that didn't go over very well, but needless to say, the film is now shown there. But I want to tell you this last piece here about this film and how you can help me and how I really wish this was not a film that I had to make. And this is going to blow most of you away. I know the correctional people do a great job, the state police folks here, the law enforcement community, the social service people, human service. I know you guys do a great job. But this blew me away as a citizen. And maybe I was just sleeping this whole time. They invited me to come speak at the juvenile correctional facility. And they called it a retreat. It was a Saturday retreat. And I went to this retreat. And they say, you're going to show the film twice. You're going to show it in a room full of moms. Then you're going to show it in a room full of inmates. We can't put you in the same room. That comes at the end. And there's a reason for that. And I said, okay. So I show the film. By the way, the film is very, very deep, as you can imagine. And I have now a room full of 80 moms crying. And it was really, really, I spent an hour and a half after the film talking to each mom. And then they took me into another room. There's a name for this room, Mr. Godinez. I can't remember what it's called, but there's a name for this room. And I'm going to tell you what this room was filled with. This room was filled with 80 young Latino and African American boys between the ages of 15 and 17, I believe, who were being shipped out the next day to begin serving anywhere from 40 to 60 years in prison for a gun crime. I spoke to all 80 boys, Latino and African American, and I do not recall, and I'm telling you the honest to goodness truth, I do not recall talking to one dummy. Not one of these kids was a kid that I would have said, wow, this kid was, I could see why he got in trouble, not too sharp. Not one. Boys, kids. And the one thing they all said, and the one thing they were all concerned with, was how this affected their moms. When we watch TV and when you watch the news, pay special attention to this. There's always a mom coming out of the hospital. There's always a mom at the murder site. There's always a mom leaving the morgue. There's always a mom being interviewed. But here's what we have. This is not why the film was made. What we have is, if we have a crime in a neighborhood, what we are left with are the 200 or 300 kids from that neighborhood who saw it. And there's no way in the world to provide an entire community of people help for post-traumatic stress syndrome, which everybody has. When you're 6 years old and you see a body on the street covered in a sheet, when you're 10 years old and you see a body on the street covered in a sheet, you don't forget that. You don't learn the same way when you go back to that classroom. And you don't behave the same way the next time your mother says, sit down, be quiet, and behave. You can't. It's impossible. You have an image of a body bleeding. I'm sorry that this was the speech I had to give. I want to tell you how you can help me. I have copies of the film. There is no money involved. If you have access to young people, if you have access to a pastor who has access to young people, if you can show this film in a school or any setting at all where you think it'll make a difference, there are copies here. If you need me or the poet to come out and present the film, we will. There is no money. There is no agenda. Again, it is the film I did not want to make. To all the mothers in this room here, thank you. Thank you. And to all the fathers here, there's this thing where we say, we're going to it's Daddy's Take a Kid to Work Day. How many people have participated in that? Right? I tried to do it, but they wouldn't let me take 13 kids to my job. But take somebody else's kid to work day. Find a kid in the community least likely to have the motherly love or the fatherly love or somebody to hold them and say, you know what, I'm going to take you to work with me one day, because that kid is the kid you got to help. You got to reach out beyond the house sometimes. I want to thank you for the award. Thank you for listening. I'll be here if you want to film. Gracias.
Don't you just love him? I love him. He's great. Thank you, Mikey O. And if you have not had a chance to watch this film, I had the pleasure of doing so, and what I like about it is that, covering news, everything gets chopped down into sound bites, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and you never really get to tell the whole story and hear these mothers talk, and that's exactly what you see in that film. They're not cut up. They're not 10-second sound bites. You get to hear their entire story, what it was like to get that phone call, what it was like to watch their kid growing up and then knowing that he's not there. So if you get a chance to, check it out and talk to Mike about it. So, okay, we'll move on because I know you guys have to get going to the next session. So our next award is the Hilda Lopez Arce Silent Hero Award, and it is going to Maria Vellon. She is an LPN and team leader at IAHSE Medical Center in La Villita. She was born in Puerto Rico in 1948. Was I supposed to say the year? Okay. Received her nursing degree as an LPN in 1982. Maria, a single and dedicated mother with 6 children, all under the age of 12, decided to move to Chicago to provide a better life for her family, her kids. Maria, determined to practice nursing in Chicago, returned to school while raising that family. She has worked for IAHSE Medical Services in La Villita since 1984, and today she receives the Hero Award. So congratulations.
This award is very special to me also. Maria Bellon, I know her family for those 35 years. And the clinic that she works at took care of me when I was ill. My family has gone there ever since, when I lived in La Villita, a little village. I know her family, the kids, I consider my brothers. And like they know her, everybody knows her as Mama. Mama at the clinic, and that's how we like to call her, Mama.
Thank you, everyone. And this means a lot to me because I've gone through a lot in the world. I just lost my daughter about 2 years ago from cancer. And Prado's always been there for me. And Dr. Bretz, it's my boss, but he's here too. We've been together for 30 years, and it's really been something special. I've grown. I love my community. I've done everything I can for everyone. And this, to me, is an honor. I did not expect this. And I thank my daughter for putting an essay about me, to which I did not know that my daughter felt like that about me. But I thank everyone and my kids, and Prado, and everyone that's here. It's an honor to be nominated for something that you never know what's gonna happen, because I never thought about this. And this I will hold in my heart, as always, in remembrance of everything, and I will continue my nursing. Because when I was a child, every time I used to go to the store with my parents, I don't know if everyone remembers, you call it the dime store. They would call it Woolworths. Every time I went in that little store, I would go always to the nursing area. And I would always get my nursing kit. And my mom said, "Why do you want that for? You're not gonna be a nurse." And I said, "Yes, I will." I said, "Yes, I will." And I determined and made my goal. And I went to university, I went to college and everything, and I'm still here as a licensed practical nurse, as a medical assistant, and as a person that gives her heart to the community. Thank you all. God bless you.
Maria, what are you doing to me? My makeup is ruined. I'm like tearing up. I can't keep it together. Okay, We're going to move on to our next Community Service Award, which is going to Dr. Kenneth Bretz. And if I heard correctly, Maria actually works with him. Board-certified family physician, received his medical degree from the College of Osteopathic Medicine and Surgery at Des Moines University in Iowa. He has been practicing in Chicago since 1974 after receiving postgraduate training at the Chicago Osteopathic Medical Center. So let's welcome and give a big applause to Mr. Bretz.
Dr. Bretz, congratulations.
Thank you.
Same thing with Dr. Bretz. This is our family doctor. 35 years he's been taking care of us. And we came out good. I can't say anything else.
It's an honor to be here. I've asked Maria to come up here because it's a team approach, what we're doing, taking care of people. So any credit that I get has to go to her also. I wish I had the eloquence of some of the other people that have been here before me today, but I don't, so I'll just do my best. I see patients, that's what I do. I was born and raised in a city in Lawrence, Massachusetts, which was a mill town, a factory town. And during the 40s and the 50s, there was a large influx of people from Puerto Rico at that time. My father was a physician, and he was one of the first providers there to accept these people as patients. And as such, he developed a huge practice of mostly Hispanic people. Like most doctors in those days, they lived at their office, and I lived there also, obviously. And the patients that came there, I got to know on an individual basis. I played baseball with them. I went to their parties. They went to my parties. We became an integral part of their community, and they as part of ours. Their culture became as well known to me as my own culture. So when I finished medical school, it was only natural that I would gravitate to the type of community that I felt most comfortable with, and that was the Hispanic community at Little Village. I've been there about 35 years. Luckily, I've had the support of my wife, Arlene, and we've been married 41 years. I've got the support of IAHSE Community Health Center, of which I'm a medical director there. And our motto is very simple. We take care of all people without regards to their ability to pay, their ethnicity, their country of origin, and their legal status. I take care of police officers, gangbangers, paramedics, you name it, I see it. I see everything from womb to tomb and do the best job I can. And I hope that I'll be able to continue to do this as long as my health holds up. It has been an absolute pleasure there. You brought me here to give me an award, of which I am grateful. But I think you have it wrong. I use this forum not as a place to accept an award, but I'm using this as a forum where I can give thanks to people who have given me the opportunity to take care of one of the greatest group of people in the world, the Hispanic population. They have come to this country for one reason and one reason only, and that's to find work so that they can provide a type of life that is better than from where they came from. And from all these people and for all of you, I give thanks and I salute all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations to you both. Okay, so our next award is the Government Service Award, and that is going to a gentleman by the name of Rodrigo Garcia. He is a native of Chicago's Little Village, graduated from Northeastern University with a BA in Finance, received an MBA in Finance and Management from the University of Illinois, Chicago, and a master's degree in Public Policy and Public Administration from Northwestern. He was appointed in 2011 as Assistant Director and Illinois Cabinet Member of the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs. Rodrigo administers numerous state of Illinois grants, we like that, and specialty services, as well as developing and directing targeted statewide initiatives designed to alleviate high priority needs in the veteran community. So a big welcome and a big applause to Mr. Rodrigo Garcia, receiving today's Government Service Award.
Would all the veterans please stand up? This former Marine. Hoorah! Semper Fi.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Adapt and overcome. A way too familiar phrase in my days. I faced many obstacles, yet the greatest obstacle was trusting my abilities to overcome such hurdles. As a first-generation Latino from La Villita on the south side of Chicago, I observed personally the toil of an immigrant father and mother, where my father consistently worked 14-hour days. He had to come home and I used to take off his construction boots. And my mother worked 8-hour days and managed a full-fledged family. As a family of 6, we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment where my brother and I would sleep on an old mattress in the living room. My father and I would traverse the alleys of the south side of Chicago in my dad's 1964 Ford pickup truck, a red one. It almost looked like the one from Sanford & Son. And we used to pick up scrap metal, boxy refrigerators, worn-out stoves and old bathtubs, rusted pipes and other items. And it was no secret that we occasionally visited the neighborhood pantry in order to put enough food on the table. I remember the sigh of relief as I entered my first year of high school, and they had just instituted a high school uniform policy, and now no one would know that I only owned 3 pairs of pants. You know, initially raised on welfare, my parents worked hard and vigorously to break away from it. Early on, I really understood and comprehended the value of hard work, resolve, and determination. Upon enlisting in my beloved Marine Corps in the year 2000, the values of honor, commitment, and the spirit of Corps were quickly reinforced. Each of my 3 deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan taught me the value of sacrifice and the importance of unwitting devotion and selflessness. Nonetheless, once I separated in the year 2000, early in 2006, there were challenges. Whether it was a need to secure housing, pay household expenses, pay for my education, search for another job, and then after finding one, having to juggle 2 different jobs with my academic studies, having to tackle military stereotypes in the classrooms, finding a tutor. I haven't been in school in so many years, finding enough time to study, obtaining previous college credit for all my military training, assimilating into the university setting, and even finding friends, all while attempting to exceed in coursework and in my life. Collectively, all these experiences prepared me for a successful career, though. It's allowed me to reach for the stars. It's allowed me to attend great universities, whether it's NEIU or Northwestern. I even been to the Harvard Kennedy School, or been working a life of finance at Morgan Stanley at the Federal Reserve, and obviously now in my position in the state of Illinois. I've had the privilege to sit in multiple national board of directors across the country and visit communities throughout. Not to mention that I have the privilege of serving side by side with some of the finest young men and women, Latino men and women as well, that this country has to offer. The greatest obstacle I faced was a failure to believe in my own abilities to adapt, prevail, and succeed. I concluded that with the inclusion of will, dedication, and hard work, we all possess the ability to accomplish the goals we've set ourselves for. I've been able to ascend from adversity, both during my childhood and my upbringing, as well as upon my separation from the military, and utilize these instances as opportunities for success. These ideals are avowed by our core principles and reinforced by our own unique experiences. Not only do we embody these characteristics as La Comunidad, but they help us define our everyday decisions and routines. It was like an old friend once told me, anything worth fighting for never came easy. No doubt about that. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Rodrigo Garcia, and I have the honor to be a member of Governor Quinn's cabinet, serving as the second in command over an agency with 1,300 staff members and a $150 million budget. Now, this accolade is no small feat. With tremendous responsibility comes a tremendous burden. I've learned a few lessons over the years that have allowed me to succeed, and I'm just going to share a few of them with you today. The following leadership principles were instilled while working in communities throughout Illinois, here in Chicago, throughout the nation, and even overseas where I've been privileged to go and speak, and working in corporate America and then obviously in government, both in the Marine Corps and here in the state of Illinois. Let's call it a primer on leadership. Number one, you won't make everyone happy. Great leadership involves great responsibility. We must oversee the well-being of an entire organization and make decisions that impact the welfare of our staff, which means some people will get angry at your actions and decisions no matter what they are. It's inevitable. If you try to have the buy-in of everyone, you'll avoid the tough decisions, avoid confrontation, and avoid offering differential treatment. As a result, we either end up with a big bureaucracy or angering the most creative and innovative employees. Number two, never accept the status quo. Don't be afraid to challenge the established norm. Don't accept a practice routine or process because it's what's been done before. Too often, change is stifled by people who cling to familiar turfs and job descriptions. Effective leadership don't manage the tasks of their employees, but rather they create a climate by which their employees can increase productivity, learn new skills, and develop innovative solutions. Leaders develop a sense of responsibility and empowerment. Number three, attention to detail. Always remain vigilant in your ongoing initiatives and projects. This is thoroughly accomplishing a task with all concern for the areas involved, no matter how small the details may be. Great leaders empower others to execute, but they remain attentive in the implementation thereof. Anything less creates an environment of complacency and lethargic behavior. Number four, people make the difference. In a modern economy where services and advanced manufacturing comprises a significant portion of our output, people are the best assets. People. Leaders must foster the professional development of their employees and encourage transformative lifelong learning. In turn, they will unleash the potential where the best and brightest employees are empowered to enact change. Number five, dare to take risks, because the road to success is a toll road, not a freeway. Success without sacrifice means absolutely nothing. The higher the mountain to climb, the greater the accomplishment. We do not give up. It is not in our Latino DNA. Number six, lead by example. Leadership is taught by example. We don't ask our employees to perform a task that we would be unwilling to do ourselves. Whether it's compiling research data, composing a budget, or extending yourself to help others, we make it our responsibility. An organization's employees are a reflection of its leaders. The buck stops there. Lastly, I'll give you one alibi. As you climb the ranks of government, which you will find yourself, I'm pretty sure of that, you will find that leadership necessitates tough decisions in light of the need for social acceptance. With every step forward that you take, you will find yourself making decisions in increasingly difficult situations. And because of this, leadership may seem lonesome. But it's these actions that differentiate organizational leaders from organizational managers, and there is a difference. America is in a constant state of revolution, not a state of imminent crisis, but rather a revolution that is constantly happening, constantly changing, and constantly evolving our community. It is that which will define this generation of Latino leaders, all of you, and our nation's future. Thank you for bestowing me this honor. Si se puede, gracias, para adelante.
Felicidades. All right, and so this is our last award. So you guys pretty soon will be able to gather your things and take off to your next sessions, which I know start at 2:45. So I will move it along here. Our last award is our Leadership Award, and that goes to Salvador Tony Godinez. If you don't know about him, here we go. Unanimously confirmed as Director of the Illinois Department of Corrections May 5th, 2011. Prior to this, Tony served as Executive Director of the Cook County Department of Corrections since 2006. Began his career as a reentry counselor in 1973. Was promoted through the ranks of the agency's juvenile division as a parole counselor, assessment counselor, and assessment unit administrator. He's received a number of awards. Here we go. Awarded for contributions and remains steadfast on issues that directly impact the Latino and African American communities. He's been honored by many organizations, including LULAC, ISLEA, and the Combined Law Enforcement Hispanic Heritage Committee. So that's just a little bit. You can read the full thing in your program. Let's give a big warm welcome to Salvador Tony Godinez.
Director Godinez, it's my honor to present you with the Leadership Service Award. As many of you guys know, Mr. Godinez is my boss. He's my director. So it's an honor to give you this.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Unlike Mikey O, I will be brief, and he is too humble. He was an honor student with us. I was obviously start out saying thank you. Thank you so much. I'm not ashamed of 1973. I really am not. I really am not. But I want to acknowledge two of the most important families in my life. First, I want to ask all of my employees from the Illinois Department of Corrections to stand. They have the hardest job, and the governor has told me this. Thank you so much. And then, thank you. But I also want to thank Mikey O for doing my segue into my other family. I take care of two things at once. My family at home, and representing my family, my date today is my daughter Jessica. So it's take your daughter to work today, I guess, all right? Jessica's mom is the rock in my life. She's, I love that woman to death. I don't mean it literally. Okay. Well. You know, awards are given for achievement, and allows for retrospection of a motivational career, of a rewarding career. But my favorite recipients of these type of awards are those that accept awards as a testament to those who have believed in them, but also as a catapult to those that didn't. You know, like in weightlifting, you know, you tear your muscles apart, then you rest them, and then they grow. Let that be your detractors. Go ahead. You know, very few people know that in '73 I started my career. I was 40 when I started applying for executive director of Cook County, denied 3 times. I was probably 44 when I started applying for director of the Illinois Department of Corrections. You know, and I finally got it. And I'll never forget the Sheriff Sheehan calling me the last day he retired, of his retirement. I had been the executive director of Cook County. And he said I was such a class act because all those years that they denied me the position, over spanning 14 years, you know, I was always, you know, very, very gracious. And I told him, Sheriff, all you did was allow me to learn more. That's all you did. And that's what I did. And I kept going. Because I knew, and forgive me, because I knew at a very tender stage in my career that I was going to make it. I was going to do well. What I didn't know that 40 years later, I would be in a room full of people that looked like me. Because in 1973, no one looked like me. And now in 2013, no one looks like us. Congratulations. Let me steal some of Rodrigo's thunder, because he said some of the same things, and I appreciate you saying them, because now I can reiterate them. Prepare, but understand the correlation that timing plays. If you prepare, and the timing will come, not vice versa. Take risk, but understand your comfort zone and try as hard as you can to make that a small comfort zone. Be eager to learn, but also be willing to teach. Perseverance, accept defeat as a lesson toward eventual victory. If you are satisfied with where you are at right now, then everything you've done to get to this point worked. Famous carpenter named Jesus said, "Ask and it will be given to you. Search and you will find it. Knock and the door will be opened for you." I'll leave you with two notes that I think are very important to me. One is a quote from Cesar Chavez. "We cannot seek achievement for ourselves and forget about progress and prosperity for our community. Our ambitions must be broad enough to include the aspirations and needs of others, for their sake and for our own." I will introduce to you 9 people in my community that I'm very proud of. Ed Ortega for parole, Deputy Chief. Where you at, Ed? Dave Gomez, Deputy Director. Mike Magana, Assistant Warden at Sheridan. Felipe Zavala could not be here. He's the Director of Training. Rick Tejeda, Assistant Warden at Stateville. Miriam Gutierrez was in the Director's Office. Joe Gomez, a Deputy Director of Special Projects. Margarita Mendoza, who is the Superintendent of the Fox Valley Work Release Center, and Annabelle Motler, the first Latina Assistant Warden of a male maximum security prison. That is my inner community. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I always love the awards portion of some of these events because it's recognition to the people who are doing the great things to continue going out there and doing the same work, and it's motivation for all of us to maybe try to do more, try to help more. You've all heard that saying before, probably. Volunteering is the price you pay for the space you occupy, and I truly believe that. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for putting up with me for the last couple of hours. Hope you enjoyed your lunch, and we will see you next year, okay?